Thanks for joining Solicited, a podcast hosted by me, Caitlin,
and me, Nichole,
where we share all things related to life in our 30s.
So speaking of that, here's something I realized recently about how I know I'm maturing, getting older. It dawned on me a couple of weekends ago that, it's two parts. One, me and my husband have a shared calendar, and we put all of our things on this shared calendar. Alerts, everything are set. And so when we want to make plans, we just look at the shared calendar. So there's that. And it's mandatory. Okay. We both have to use it. So much so that we almost missed plans a couple of weekends ago because one of us forgot to put it in the calendar. So if our friend had not texted me like 2 days before asking about the dinner reservation, we would have just not fucking shown up to something we paid like $150 to do because it was not in the calendar. So
Wait, you paid it in advance?
Yeah, because it was tickets. It was a burlesque show.
Oh.
Yes. And live and die by that fucking shared calendar, Apple Calendar.
Dude.
Can't track my life without it.
First off, how did you manage Nick to agree to that in the budget?
It was his idea, so that was an easy sell. He actually asked me if I wanted to go, and then I was the one that was like, it's fucking how much? But we'd already committed, so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was like, that's not cheap, but...
No, and it was not worth $150, to be honest with you. It was good, but not $150 good.
But fun?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good night.
Okay, well, that's good. So it sounds like I need to get an Apple Calendar with Mike because we don't have one. And the amount of times that he asks me, do we have plans this weekend? Or, what are we doing this week and what's going on? I have a calendar on our refrigerator. We walk past it every day because, who doesn't go to the refrigerator to get food and drinks and water and things throughout the whole day? And I also even write our meal plans on the fridge. So that way, if I'm trying to put the baby down or whatever, he can help me jumpstart dinner. And I mean, you know this, but he works from home. And so he's on calls constantly throughout the day. So for me to know when to start getting lunch ready or doing different things, it'd be really great to have a shared calendar to know when things are going on with him. And wow, I need to know, do the people have shared calendars with their significant others, like their partners? Please chime in because I write on our fridge one every week.
You have to up your game, dude. This is like you've been in the minor leagues, and the shared Apple Calendar is the major leagues. Got to do it.
Well, Mike keeps talking about it, but now don't just talk about it, be about it. So link me up, boo. I'm going to make him listen to this. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you didn't miss it, and I'm glad you didn't blow the $150 for nothing. So
same. I would have been so pissed.
I would have been so upset too, honestly. Nothing worse than wasted money, in my humble opinion. So today we're going to talk about work. And as most people would probably agree, is that your workplace is your second home. And a lot of you spend probably more time at work than you do at home. So if you're fortunate enough to have an opportunity to work in a job that you love, that's great. But most people have some sort of conflicts at work, no matter what. It's inevitable, Workplace conflicts happen with team members, managers, bosses, vendors, depending on what type of job you have. And, conflict in the workplace is not ever fun. And for us to just define workplace conflict, I think that so much of workplace conflict happens with opposing personalities, at least in my personal experience, is that maybe you guys don't see eye to eye on something, and it can start as a simple complaint or just a difference of opinion, and it can turn real freaking fast. I don't know if that's been your case with work stuff, but holy moly.
Well, what you said about it being your second home, I'm just like you fight with your spouse and your parents and whoever else, I feel like it's inevitable that you will encounter a disagreement in the workplace. I think I don't know. I think it's to what you were saying. It's like sometimes opposing personalities, but I've also experienced like working in healthcare. You can tell when someone's super duper burnt out, and then it's just I just think it's like they're ripe for conflict. So I think it
Nothing
can be
better
a
to
lot of
do.
things.
Yeah.
And people are just edgy, right? Like they're just quicker to like kind of jump down your throat when people already feel like way maxed out. So I don't even know, like I can't even say like some of the conflicts I've had if they were actually opposing personalities or just like opposing opinions. I think I find myself usually just disagreeing with people.
Well,
So
burnout is real. As a teacher, and I only taught for 10 years. Y'all know this. I've said it a million times on this podcast already. But your team and your staff and your boss and your students, it has such a huge impact on you, honestly. Like if you have one tough kid in your class that pushes your buttons every single day, it it can make or break you. Same thing. If you're on a team and you don't get to choose your team when you're a teacher in elementary school, like obviously different situation for you.
yeah, different situation for me. It's more like I don't even know how many days a year we work. It's like I don't know. But
Too
you
many.
mentioned like too many. But you mentioned like the old guard, and I moved positions within like the last year, and I have come up against that. It's just like what like it can conflict when you're a new person and you come in and you're like, why do we do it like this? This doesn't make any damn sense. And you've got like the old guard going like, this is how we do it. And you're like, I don't care. Then you're going to probably find yourself in some conflict.
Been there, done that. And
Yeah.
your situation's different though too because you are higher up and you are in charge of a lot of people that are technically older than you, correct?
Yes, I'm in charge of a wide age range of people. So yes, there's a handful of people on my team that are much older than me. Like I think the oldest person on my team is like in her 70s. So and like an old school, like old timer. Like I mean, she obviously like laps me in like experience, right? But unfortunately, she has to listen to what I say sometimes. So that has also not with that particular person, but like that has also been interesting to navigate in both conflict, but also just like avoiding conflict, being very aware that I am much younger and some people have a problem with that.
Yeah. I gotta say, as a young female teacher, that has that was probably one of the biggest conflicts that I faced, no matter what school I was at, no matter what grade level, no matter how many years of experience, because I mean, at least I think I still look young, but I look young. And actually, one of my first couple of years teaching, I had parents come in for Meet the Teacher. And funny enough, they were speaking in Spanish. I can understand some Spanish. And I vividly remember them saying to each other that I looked young and I looked back at and like I was listening to their conversation and I'm like, yeah, I've been teaching. I think that was only like my second or third year teaching. And I just straight up told them how old I was and that I do have years of experience under my belt. So that it's so frustrating to me how people who are older than you feel like they can talk down to you or, you know, is it the saying rule the roost? Like, I don't know, something like that. And I have had that conflict at multiple schools where somebody thinks that they can talk to me because and like I'm inexperienced and I bring yes, I know you might have been teaching longer, but like check yourself before you try and check me because I very much took it in the beginning as a teacher, but then in my last couple years, like you cannot call me and chew me out or snap at me without me snapping back, baby. Look out. So I cannot.
Did you have a lot of conflict when you were a teacher?
Um, Thankfully, not so much. I do think it was harder. I was in some situations similar to you where um I was leading a team and everybody was older than me and a lot of people were not getting along on the team and very stubborn in their ways and honestly it was very hard to just kind of keep the peace. Um, and I think my friends all realize too in education that there's gonna sometimes be difficult team members and those people that are not gonna change. And I think that's the hardest part about it is that you can't change people. And you can offer suggestions, you can try different things, but a lot of times teachers will go behind their own classroom doors and close the door and do whatever the heck they want, whether it was what you're supposed to be doing or not. And I mean that out of love. Like, I've worked at several schools where I was supposed to be the glue to fix things. One of my first years teaching too in a rougher school was with teachers that were much, much, much older than me. And so I was trying to steer them away from worksheets and do more hands-on activities teaching kindergarten. And they just fought tooth and nail. And yeah, dude, there's conflict. I think here's the other thing. There's conflict everywhere. No matter where you work, there's conflict. Now, you throw a whole bunch of mostly women in an elementary school, there's definitely conflict. And he said this, she said that. Oh, did you hear about this person? Oh, this person's getting moved to this grade level. And like, the rumor mills are real. Um, yeah.
What is the worst conflict you've had at work?
I've had quite a few. I can think of like specific scenarios of people thinking that they can get away with talking down to me, like head turns and all. Um, and oh gosh, I just it actually enrages me right now just thinking back about some of these. But one of my biggest problems, actually enough, was not with a staff member; it was with a parent. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So, long story short, I was new to my school and single, and I was dating, like just trying to figure out all the things. And everyone at my school knew I was single, and they were trying to find me a man because they were like, "You're so great. Like, why are you single? Blah 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 blah." So even my students were trying to hook me up with our wonderful custodian who's married and like much, 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 much older. And anyway, it was funny. So we had this SRO that came and visited our school and was like a filling in for our resource officer. And everyone was telling me, "Oh my god, he's so cute. Caitlin, you should go on a date with him." Blah 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 blah. So then they ended up inviting this guy to happy hour, to one of our happy hours that we went to, and he came. I was there. We were flirting. I gave him my number, whatever. We went we went to dinner. I let the man pick me up because he's a cop. He could have looked me up anyway. That's just my thoughts on it. And I was like, okay, whatever. Picked me up. We went to dinner. He brought me back home. And then I never heard from the dude again. So, I don't think he ever came to my school ever again after that, funny enough. It was towards the end of the school year anyway. Um, and then this parent was going around, and turns out I got called to my principal's office at the end of the school year, and my principal had said that there were rumors going around work that I was hooking up with the SRO. And I was like, what? I was shook. I was shook that this even happened because, again, I don't talk about my stuff. Yes, the SRO was at the happy hour that somebody invited him to, and we happened to be there. And yes, we went on one date and nothing happened. And I had never heard from the guy again. Like, dropped me off at my doorstep, gave me a peck bird kiss goodbye, peace out. And then I never saw the man ever again in my whole life. So I was livid that this parent was telling other teachers at my school about this. And somehow it got to my principal, and my principal called me into their office. Mind you, I then got another phone call. I go back up to my classroom. I'm fuming. I'm like in tears because who the hell do you think you are that you can start talking about my life like you know it, because you don't know it? And then my principal called me back and was like, I forgot to talk to you about something else. And they were saying that um the other rumor was that I was showing up to work drunk in the morning, and or like hungover from the night before. And I remember like my blood was boiling, and I looked at my principal and I was like, I would never jeopardize my students, myself, or my job. Like,
Where
and
did
do
that
that,
even come from, though? Like, where did that even come from?
make them
Like, who
crap up.
says that shit? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so this whole thing happened. And mind you, this is like the beginning of me being at this school. Also, mind you, this is a school where I had never had parent support, like really ever in my teaching career. And when I got to this school and there was so much parent support and like hands on help, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. No, no. And
Parents that spend too much time at school have too much time on their damn hands out there gossiping.
yeah, and I just, my whole thing is like, you're supposed to be building people up, especially women. Like, come on. Like, come on. Do you really have nothing better to do than spread a rumor about a late 20-year-old teacher who went on a date with a cop and is making up rumors that you're drunk? Because that is not true. And that couldn't have been furthest from the truth. Like, how dare somebody judge me and also make up rumors that could jeopardize my job? I think that that is what pissed me off the most, is that as a teacher, like, you already are held to a higher standard than in most careers, and we're paid the worst out of every career probably out there. Like, it's insane to me how we're supposed to be here but they pay us like this. So
I'm also like, what does it say about that person that you would be like, that you would just gossip about somebody who's supposed to be taking care of your children for 8 hours being at work inebriated, allegedly? I'm just like, get over. Like, that's just ridiculous to me.
I don't know how somebody would function teaching young children hungover anyway. I'm just saying. Like, are you kidding me? No. No, thank you. I already have enough problems sleeping and like just waking up. I'm not a morning person. I can tell you that. Like, I'm not a morning person at all. So, like I said, having a rough student in your class can make or break your class too. So, oh gosh, I just can't even. So, that's definitely probably one of the worst conflicts I've ever had, because not only did it, like I say, attack my character, but it painted a picture to my coworkers of somebody, like, I was new to the school, so that nobody really knew me. Like, they knew me, but like didn't know me. Um, and thankfully, I had so many people who had my back, and my even my principal had my back on this whole situation as well. Um, oh, it just still makes me sick to my stomach that people have nothing better to do than to spread rumors and start shit, because it's really terrible. So, yeah, so that's probably my worst conflict, and it still makes my blood boil to this day thinking about that interaction, and just like getting the intercom call saying, "Miss Morris, can you please come to the principal's office?" It's like it was like a, yeah, it's like a little slap on your hands, like with a ruler type thing. And I didn't do anything. Like, I think that's what pissed me off even more, is like, I did absolutely nothing wrong. But when your name comes on the freaking intercom and everyone can hear you, like, it's like you're being reprimanded.
Gives me an anxiety attack just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you?
What about me? Yeah, my worst conflict is very different. Not not to say there haven't been. I have also come into like a rumor mill bullshit at work, and it's just like, get over it. It's you don't have anything better to do. But the worst conflict that I was ever in, long story short, so one of my staff members outreached me and, said they were getting a lot of grief from this clinical pharmacist. And I said, well, add me to the chat. So there's like now a big chat going on. And this pharmacist is like having, this is my opinion, guys. Okay. So this might be clouded. All right. My opinion, having like a minor meltdown because she was stuck on the phone making an adult protective services report. And so I could tell that she was very irritated that she was stuck on the phone making this report. And she was essentially dropping crumbs in the chat. Crumbs in the chat to say that really my social worker should be the one making this report for her. And I just didn't take the bait. I was like, yep, APS sucks. They take forever. These are the other things we can do for you. Good luck. And then after a certain amount of time, I just didn't respond to her anymore because I'm like, there's nothing I can do for you. Well, she continued to spiral after this and continues to like blow up my social worker about this situation. And my social worker is like, this is what we can do. And this is all that we can do. And she did not like that answer. And so long story short, we wind up on like a complex care review. And it's like me, my staff member, this pharmacist, somebody else from the mental health service. And this pharmacist hops on kind of hot to begin with. So I already was not feeling her energy. And here's the thing you should know about me. I am not an angel. If you come hot at me, like I will match that. And
you
that
bark
is
back, baby. You bark
Yeah.
back. That's what I call it.
I don't usually back down, and that is not good because adding fuel to the fire doesn't usually help conflict, usually. And so we're in this fucking call talking about this fucking situation, and the APS report comes up. And I just wanted to hear her say it. I wanted to hear her say that what she had wanted was my social worker to do the APS report. And she fucking said it. And I just said, that's actually not appropriate. Like, we're all mandated reporters. It is never appropriate to hand off an APS report to somebody else. That's all of our responsibilities. And she looked at me and was like, that's not ever how it's happened, and like wanted to combat me on this. And I got provocative at this point. This is my bad. And I remember saying to her, social workers are not your secretaries to do the administrative work you don't want to do. And that was fuel to the fire. So that blew up. She then got like, it got hot. She got so fucking pissy. I just like didn't care. At that point, I was like, I will fight you. And then she got so upset that she logged off. She was like, I have to go, and like just got off the call and like left the rest of us on the call to be like, what the fuck? So not cool. And it felt, I felt so fucking terrible after it because I know I was in the right, but I was intentionally provocative with her because I thought she was being an asshole, but that made me an asshole. You know what I'm saying? So while it felt really good, I felt like I sunk to her level a little bit. So I was the bigger person, and I like let it cool for like an hour or two. And then I messaged her and I just said, that was the worst professional interaction I have ever had. I feel terrible. Do you have time today to reconnect? And just like her and me. And she responded to me and said, like, thank you for reaching out. I agree. That felt terrible. Yes, let's connect. And then we did. So we were able to mend it, but she stood her ground that like this was ours to do. And I stood mine where I was like, no, the fuck it's not. And she ultimately said like she felt like she was like the reason why she got so hot was because she felt like the urgency was not being heard and seen by us. And I said, you're right, because we didn't think it was urgent. Like, we told you what the situation, like, it was a shitty situation, but there was nothing urgent about it. And she sort of heard that. And I like, offered to do like a couple of things and, reiterated that we're not going to do your APS reports for you. And then we like buttoned it up and we're done. But it was that first call was, I mean, fucking hot. I've never had somebody speak to me the way that she spoke to me. Yeah.
Um, for our listeners, can you say what an APS report is?
Yeah, adult protective services. So it's when,
That
an elderly or vulnerable adult is not, you have concerns that they're not safe or they're being exploited in some way or physically or sexually abused. You have a responsibility. Everybody actually has a responsibility to report that, especially
Gotcha.
in healthcare. So I work in healthcare.
Yes.
Everybody in healthcare should be reporting those, but people feel very self-important when they have certain letters behind their name and they feel like they should have somebody else do something as mundane and, irritating as an APS report. And that is just not true.
Yeah. Wow. Um, on this call, or like, could you see faces on this? Or, okay. That's what I was going to ask because I'm telling you right now that probably did not make it any better. But in my elementary schools that I've taught at, it's the same thing. When you answer the phone, you can see the camera, so you can see each other's faces. So you can see the attitude on somebody's phone call when they're calling you and they're trying to wave their
Mm-hmm.
head and shake their fingers at you and tell you
Yeah,
you didn't take attendance.
and as I
Sorry.
recall, it was like a lot of like when I would say something, right? Like the big eyes, like visibly disagreeing with me. And of course I'm gonna paint myself the angel. I'm pretty stoic. Like I don't give a lot away usually. I'll bite with my words, but I'm not usually super expressive. And she was like giving me a ton of big eyes and head shakes and yeah. And it was her
Well,
tone of voice. Her tone of voice was very much like like you could tell she was pissed. Like you could just tell she was pissed.
I will say there was a good season of life where you had to wear a mask and you could hide your face in meetings and on phone calls, but you can't do that no more. um,
Nope, you can't.
yeah. No, that's hard. And I mean, that's a perfect example of two people standing their ground in a very strong difference of opinions. And a lot of work conflict is hard to be fixed because I don't know if it's just people being stubborn or just like to their core feeling that they're correct. It's very difficult,
Like
you
that
know?
that resonated with me. Yeah. No, and that's exactly I think that's how both of us felt in this of like to my core, I know I'm right. I mean, she was wrong. I was actually right. Neither here nor there. But you know what the thing is like there's this thing when they about mediation, right? When you're like in workplace, like real workplace conflicts and you end up having to go to like mediation and stuff. And they say, I had somebody at work say mediation is great for reasonable people. And that doesn't mean that you reach a resolution. And this situation was very much like that. We sort of reached a resolution and we were able to see where the other one was coming from, but neither of us changed our minds. But that only, I think, worked because we were both like semi-reasonable people. If this had happened with somebody else that was like, I actually don't give a fuck that felt bad for you. No, I don't want to fucking talk to you. Done. Like then it would have never been like it never would have felt better. But that was not who this person was. This person was like, yeah, and this goes back to the burnout thing. And the other thing that I had, which I think we should all remember, is like I knew that this was a good person and a good clinician because we have a mutual work friend. And so I fucking knew. So I was trying so hard to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I just felt like she was so wrong. So I feel like I was willing to mend it with her in a way that maybe for somebody else I wouldn't have, because I was like, we have mutual friends. Like it matters to me that we mend this. But if you don't feel that way, be burning bridges. Oh, that's what I was going to say. The other thing about her too was like she was fucking burned out, man. She's like grinding out seeing patients, totally on overload. And so yeah, she was like super fucking frustrated that it felt like we weren't helping her. And that I understand. I can understand feeling frustrated because you feel like somebody isn't helping you. It doesn't mean that they're not helping you, but I understand that feeling. Like that's a feeling that I feel all the time where I'm like, why can't you just help me with this thing? So like I think ultimately, reasonable people, empathetic, believing the best in people, you can generally get through conflicts.
Yeah, and I will say I've come a long way with carrying myself in work things I will say towards the end of my little teaching career, I don't want to say I stopped caring because that is not true. Like, I still loved my kids. I was fighting tooth and nail up until the very last day of school trying to get some of my kids more support for the following school year, trying to retain kids, trying to get kids in summer school, like doing all of these different things. But at some point, like for me anyway, as a teacher, like you carry that shit home with you. Like you think about those kids at home. I it takes a toll on you. And so for me, I had to remind myself I'm pregnant. Like I was very pregnant right at the end of my school year last year. And you have to pause and check in with yourself and remind yourself before you're about to speak, like to remain authentic, number one, but also can you actually change the situation? Or is this like, what is your purpose for saying what you want to say? Because I used to voice my opinion a hell of a lot in all of our work meetings that we had weekly. And then at some point I just like kind of realized if something wasn't going to change, then why am I still fighting? Does that make sense? Um so yeah, no, work conflict, man. Gosh. I don't know about you, but like is your blood boiling just a little bit reliving that situation?
A little bit reliving it. Yeah. And I also think I feel like work failures also hit in a way that personal failures don't, because I feel like for me, I like take great pride in being professional and, like knowing my shit and being able to, show up really well in my professional life. And so when I fail, I feel like it hurts even more than just like Nichole failing. It's like, oh, the best version of myself failed. And that situation felt like
Oh,
that of like, oh God, I totally just shit the bed. Like a better leader would have handled this better. And it becomes like so much more than just, I don't know, what I fail at in my personal life. I didn't work out today, or I'm not going to do that
yeah.
5K or whatever the fuck it is. It just feels like so much more like soul level, person level, identity level failure.
Yeah. I never even really honestly thought about that, but that makes perfect sense too, because how you felt about that situation is how I feel about like a kid not getting something in the classroom and like you are trying so many different things and trying to help them so much that it feels like a personal failure and that you are not effective at your position. And I totally understand that completely. And it's the same thing with any kind of work conflict with the boss or your part or like my co-teachers and different things. It is it's I think that in your position and even in my position, a lot of teachers, they're stubborn, they're headstrong because you're the leader of your classroom. So when you have to collaborate sometimes, it's very difficult when again, you have all these different personalities coming to a room, but we all have different teaching styles and ways of getting whatever that message is across to other people. Um I'm like still stuck on the fact that it feels like a personal like failure because I never really thought of it like that. And that has happened to me several times in my career. I think overall that people will take as much as you're willing to give in work situations. And if you are like give, and people know that they can rely on you and you are a good worker and you carry yourself well, you tend to get the hard workers tend to kind of get more tasks piled on them, at least in my personal experience. And
I call it the curse of competency. If you're really good,
mm,
you work harder than anybody.
girl, I just saying. Now, so many people will just take it and not say anything. And that's where the burnout really happens. It starts to pile. For teachers, lots of teachers just don't say no. Or say the previous school year, you know that, say, you have this really handful of a kindergartner, and you know that this teacher's really great with behavior kids. You're going to plop that kid into that person's classroom, and you get that your plate is full. Like your plate is full, and you get them all the time because you're good with them. And there is I think there's just such a disconnect in work in general that you have to have healthy boundaries. Keeping work at work and not taking things personally, doing what you can in the time that you have when you're at work, and leaving it at the door when you walk out of it. And I could go on and on. Like, I definitely think we should have a boundaries conversation about work boundaries in the future.
Well,
But
it's even relevant to conflicts though, right? It's like I think to navigate any conflict you have to realize like what are you willing to give in a conflict and what are you not willing to give just because you're in conflict. So I think boundaries is relevant everywhere.
yeah, no, for sure. And again, I think that a lot of times too, just however your work dynamic is, people need to be more open minded to change. And we all know that change is really hard. And so people resist it when you're just trying to come up with a better solution to how your company works and functions on a day to day. If you can create a better system in place to function better, why would people not want that? I don't because it's change and because it's hard. And that's the answer right there. Um and then you add in the different personalities and cultures and styles and having to work together even if there are clashes. Again, conflict is inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Oh gosh. Well, I will say thank you, honey. Don't get me
Oh my
wrong.
gosh.
I really miss my students. I worked at a really good school and I loved my coworkers, but there was still conflict.
Yeah, and this is the last thing I'll say about it. I also am just sitting here like not reminiscing, reflecting on how I fight in my relationship versus how I fight at work, and it's vastly different. And so it's just, you know what like interesting. Like
Oh my God, yes.
and yeah, it's almost like a split personality, man. And it's like I like to think that I'm who I am at work, but I think I'm not. Like, I think I'm definitely a different person at work. It's like I am myself at work, but I'm definitely a different version of myself at work, which is illuminated when topics like this come up where I'm like, oh, yeah, no, interesting.
But you know what I also think about, and you just saying this, is that, you know, you don't really get to pick your colleagues unless you're the boss and you're hiring the people that work with you.
Even still, somebody can show up and show out for a 30-minute, a 60-minute interview. But when you hire their ass, you're like, that was a fucking mistake. So, it's still, there's no guarantees.
I definitely have experience in that. But you talking about fighting differently and like conflict differently just made me laugh because work is like a higher pressure situation. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to pick your colleagues really. They're not your partner, your husband's not the one writing your paycheck. Like, it's totally different. And you choose your partner and you choose how you interact with your partner almost like about conflicts, and also you're most vulnerable with your partner. So when you're hurt and you want to fight hard, you know how to hit your partner like in the gut with what's going to really affect them.
Yeah, totally. And I think for me, it's like, because I know what the consequences are at home, right? Like versus the consequences at work might vary depending on who you've just gotten yourself into a fight with. And so I feel like it's safer to fight at home. And I think so I fight dirtier sometimes, right? And then at work, I'm still an
Guilty.
asshole, but I'm a little bit more buttoned up. So it's interesting.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah, no, I definitely think that, I mean, I couldn't agree more. There's a lack of I guess defined consequences at work always. So you can kind of like just push the limits just a little bit to see, what you can get away with. Whereas with your significant other, you fight hard and, kick them in the knees. Kick them
Yes.
in the knees. So moral of the story for y'all that just listened to this. First off, I hope you got a kick out of these work conflicts that we shared because Lord have mercy. Moral of the story here, though, is play nice at work. Play nice at work. Stand your ground. Like, I don't want to tell people not to stand their ground. Definitely stand your ground, but tactfully. Tactfully stand your ground. And don't let people boss you around. I think that that's where I'm at, is that, you're allowed to have differences. You're allowed to be strong. You are allowed to be whatever the heck you want to be, but also have a little grace and be a little understanding of people's differences of opinions. And don't spread rumors about people, especially not true ones.
Don't spread rumors about people, who they're dating, and all of this bullshit at work. That's just petty bullshit. Don't do that, y'all. Don't do it.
Yeah. No, no. Think about what you're grateful for in your job. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Solicited. We love y'all. We'll see you next week.
Like, subscribe, follow, share, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.